All right, so welcome everybody. My name's Emily Morgan. I'm coming to you from Philadelphia today, and I'm the owner, founder, visionary at Delegate Solutions. We are a virtual executive support service for entrepreneurs. And today I have joining me Shannon and Alec, who are going to tell you a little bit about themselves. And then we're going to talk more about who, not how, and overcoming some obstacles. So we diligently studied all of the information that you submitted when you registered today. So we have a lot of responses to some of the questions that came up. But as we go, if you have questions, you can just pop them here right into chat and I will call them out so we can get those answered for you. But Shannon, would you like to start?
I would love to. So just to introduce myself, as we talked about, Shannon Waller, been with Strategic Coach 30 years as of July of this year, which is crazy. Who does that? And I play a lot of different roles at Coach, but one of the things I'm super passionate about is entrepreneurial teamwork. And so Who Not How is completely at my realm. It actually has really people connect, do what you do best at. I'll describe it in a minute. And then actually find the right team members who can actually help know the hows of what you don't. It's amazing how that just accelerates progress. So I've 1995 created the Strategic Coach team programs, which is actually where I met Emily, and just have loved facilitating anything I can do to have people work together better, easier, faster, so they get more results is really my passion. So it's an absolute delight to be here. And Emily, thank you so much for organizing this. Over to you, Alec.
Yeah, Alec Broadfoot. I'm the visionary at Vision Spark. And so we're an executive search firm, and we help entrepreneurial companies find and hire great who's. And so we use process and tools. I've been a part of Coach. I joined maybe 4 years ago, Strategic Coach, and absolutely love it. And yeah, so it's something I'm super passionate about, helping entrepreneurs overcome any obstacles.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
And I've been in Coach probably about 7 years, super fan, currently in 10X. And today we're going to talk about one of the key principles Dan is calling one of his biggest ideas, which is who, not how.
Right.
And we're going to specifically talk about obstacles and share some experiences that we've had that might be helpful. And Shannon is going to introduce the who, not how concept.
Perfect. So if anyone wants more info, you probably already have this or know about it, but it's really well articulated by Ben Hardy and Dan in this book. But who, not how is a really fundamental shift in mindset for most entrepreneurs to, instead of focusing on when we get started in our businesses, when we take on a new task, we're like, okay, how do I do this? And lots of us are intelligent and we're good learners and we apply ourselves diligently and we're tired is what usually happens. Or we have this really, really big idea. And but we look at all the hows that are required and it's very de-energizing. So the shift in mindset is, instead of looking at how we do something in order to accomplish this bigger, better future and goal that we're after, who do we know that knows how to do the how? So that is really the essence of the who, not how concept. And it came out of a brilliant conversation that Dan has frequently with our brilliant friend and partner, Dean Jackson, on there. What was called the Joy of Procrastination podcast is now called Cloudlandia. And it came out, Dean said one day, I've started to realize that instead of asking, how do I do something, I'm going to start asking who. And Dan goes, oh, so who, not how, or something to that effect. That's how this happened. Because a lot of times we struggle with delegating. Emily, one of your life's work is to help people get better at delegating. But when you realize, when you have the right who, it's, to use an EOS term, entrepreneurial operating system, you're elevating to the right person and frees you up from something you probably weren't ever going to be that great at anyway. So it's this, once you get the mind shift of, instead of me trying to do everything myself, rugged individual, anyone? Put up your hand. It's like, I can actually put a team around me who's superb at everything that I'm not, which frees me up to do more of what I love to do and do best. So this is a way of getting together what we call unique ability teamwork. But as soon as you have this shift in mindset, you're like, okay, I need who's. where do I find the darn who's, right? So, that's some of the obstacles that some of you mentioned. So that's why we're here, because all of us are passionate about, I'm passionate about how people work together. You guys are brilliant at providing and finding some of the great who's to really support one another. And one other quick point about this, the people needed for entrepreneurs are different than from the rest of the world. So to actually have expertise in what do entrepreneurs need, what do they want, with whom do they work well, with whom is it a disaster, that is really specialized knowledge. So I'm really honored to be with you, Emily and Alec, because you've decided to specialize. You're not working with some other audiences out there. You have really specialized in working with entrepreneurs, and that is a very unique knowledge base. So I think a lot of the answers that we're going to come up with today and provide are ones that are very unique to this audience, and may or may not fit for somebody else. So I think we're having a very, very special conversation today that I'm excited about. All right, let's jump into some of the obstacles. And I know, Alec, there was one that you just wanted to grab around budget. So let's kick us off with that.
Yeah, sure. So oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we think, man, it'd be awesome to have an additional person on my team. And how can I afford that? Or I can't afford to pay what these big companies are paying. So one is I want to challenge you. So we one of our quotes that we like a lot around here is one by Steve Jobs, and that is a small group of A+ players can run circles around a large group of B and C players. And so if you really think about that, you could actually get a lot more return on your investment if you have a lot of superstars working for you. So it's actually lower on your budget. So I want you to think about what that would do to your team if you had A+ players. And so sometimes a client will call and say, hey, I have an opening, here's my budget. Here's my budget for, VP of sales or an integrator or something like that. And let's say for the sake of argument, it's 100,000. My budget's 100,000 a year. And then I may say, is that for a B player or an A player? And they may say, well, for an A player, I can go 120, right? So you're willing to pay more for A player. So that's actually something that you should consider when advertising the position, is to post the A player salary. And then keep in mind the whole idea of hiring a who, whether it's someone to mow your lawn or someone to run your company, it's an investment. And when you have someone that you're looking to bring in your company, you should get a 3 to 5 times return for their salary. So if you're paying $50,000 a year, you can get a return of $250,000 a year if you hire the right person. If that frees up your time or the hiring manager's time so they can work in their unique ability, it's actually going to have a ripple effect where you can really grow your company.
There's also something to be said, Alec, for the work that you guys do in saving people money too, because like the ability to use diagnostics and expertise to really help find the right people is going to save us money in the long run too. I mean, we have established like a baseline for the type of person that we hire over and over again, that we validate before we make any hire against that baseline. So I think it's not just about what it's costing you to spend to hire someone, it's about what energy and cost you have to spend to even get the right person, and being ready to invest in that piece of it too.
Yeah, thank you, Emily.
And just to add to that savings part, I mean, no one likes, especially I use all the time, is you don't want to kiss a lot of frogs, right? Like you want to find your prince or princess really quickly. And so diagnostics help with that. Defined processes, being really, really clear in what you want, are so essential. And it's not what some of the rest of the world is looking for. So I know I got this question the other day, how do I find someone, what is, in terms of like how can I minimize the time and effort required to find this person? And it's kind of amazing if you put the word, if you're really, really clear on what you want, and you have a reasonable investment. I want to talk about that too. it's amazing. You kind of attract the right people to you, I think, and you have great who's who know how to find people, but it is an investment, not a cost. If anyone is, if you buy into Who Not How, it's cost. Normally what we do with costs is we try and minimize them. And any team member who feels like they're minimized, even if they were an A+ player, will quickly sink right to being a lower contributing individual, because no one wants to be minimized. That's not a fun environment or atmosphere to work in. So when you look at people as investments, you look at how can I raise them up? How can I grow this capability? And having the right tools in place to assess, oh, okay, this person has the mental energy, the skills, the capability, the mindset that we can build on. It just means you are, stacking the odds in your favor. So yes, definitely investments, not costs, is how we need to be thinking about this.
And Shannon, there was a question that I know you wanted to tackle about who to hire first, and how you're thinking about that. So can you share some thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Thank you. It's such a good question, because who do you hire first? So, and I love it because it kind of, this taps into the next book I'm writing. So I've written 2 little baby books on entrepreneurial teamwork and issues that I experience frequently in all of my work with entrepreneurs and their teams. But there are two real roles that I find most entrepreneurs are missing. And I'm going to start with the one that is almost the last hire. And people hire everyone else before they hire this position. They hire their chief technology officer, they will hire a president, a CFO, an integrator. They'll hire all these people before they hire a strategic assistant for themselves. And it's like, I love this expression, Emily, you and I laugh about this sometimes. If you don't have an assistant, you are one. Right? And it's like, frankly, some of us are very poorly paid, or very, very poor assistants for what we're being paid for this role. I have almost no skills in this particular area, just saying. So I know I need help, which is a bit freeing sometimes. So a strategic assistant, someone who will partner with you, will help manage your time, your activity, and your relationships, is absolutely essential. And again, this is where you want an A+ player, to your point, Alec, because having someone who just do the minimum, that's not going to leverage you. Having someone who will actually get how you work, get how your mental energy plays out, has been trained, Emily, makes a profound difference. So I know with mine, her name's Nicole, she's fabulous. It tripled, if not quadrupled, my productivity. That's worth a lot. So, it kept giving her increases because I'm like, this is incredible, because she was a total right fit person. And we used lots of profiles before that. The second position that a lot of entrepreneurs need, and this comes usually after they put together a little bit of a team, is what we call the make it real person. So most business owners are visionaries, they make it up. And then they have lots of people who are specialists in their role, and they're the make it recur people. They're good process people. They're process managers is what we call them. They're the get stuff done, hugely valuable. But when you come up with a new idea, who do you give it to? If you give it to one of your process managers, it goes to the bottom of the list because they already have lots of things to do. Thank you very much. And yours, you just added a priority that's going to go at the bottom. There's another role that we call innovation manager. And this is if you make it up, they're the ones who make it real. So they're the ones who kind of get it going. They add some stuff together. They bring in their own ideas. They get the idea launched. They get it functioning. May not be perfect. That's okay. And once it's up and generating revenue, because there was $0 in the idea part, in the make it real part, you get some revenue. And then when it's functional, then you pass it off to the process managers, because they're the ones who will make it more efficient, strip out some of the eccentricities that I'm sure you have built in. And that's where profit comes in. So that innovation manager, that make it real partner with you, who's going to go, oh, a new idea, great, rather than, oh gosh, I've already got too much to do, is a big deal. So strategic assistants and innovation managers are kind of the 2 roles that I see most entrepreneurs missing and not prioritizing. They're looking for everybody else, but they're still not personally being leveraged. And it just makes the world of difference in terms of their own happiness coming into work every day, but also their own efficiency. And then they don't bug the rest of the team. Another important factor. So those would be my 2 almost first hires, or most important hires that people can make.
Yeah, definitely. I love if you don't have one, you are one.
Not usually a good idea.
If we have any questions, you guys can pop them into the chat and we'll try to get to them. Otherwise, we're just going to keep working through what was already submitted. Before I jump in, is there anything else you guys wanted to address from the list?
Nope. Go ahead, Emily, because I'm sure you've got some good stuff. Lots of the stuff in there is totally within your unique ability.
Yeah, there's a lot in here about delegation, which is what I usually speak to. And I may have shared this, but I'm in the middle of writing a book called A Culture of Delegation, which is all about how we can cascade delegation through the organization. Because if we're leveraged, our team is leveraged, like we can use that as a retention strategy because everyone on your team is doing work that they love. Like Shannon attributed, she's been that coach 30 years. Why? She feels engaged. She's probably, she loves her work and she's been given the autonomy and the resources to someone to delegate to. So just keep that thought in mind as you sort of think through delegation, that you can use it as a retention strategy in your team. And then in terms of like what to delegate, we always recommend you start with the repeatables. So what are the things you're doing more than once? Because that's an easy thing to just document, turn it into a process, and let someone else take it off your plate. And always with the low-hanging fruit, because that helps you build confidence around actually delegating to someone else. So those are like my 2 tips on where to start with delegation. But again, what we're dealing with as entrepreneurs is energy and time. And so the more we can find ways to leverage our energy and time, the more impactful we can be.
Emily, let me just ask you a question about this. So you work with a ton of entrepreneurs who are super bogged down, hitting what we call the ceiling of complexity or frustration, is what we call it at Coach, because they have too much of some things like to-dos and too little time, for example, to do it in. What are like the top 2 or 3 things that repeatable tasks that you find are the low-hanging fruit? I'd love to drill into some of those specifics because I'm always curious, what do other people's worlds look like other than mine?
Well, the simple answer in terms of what is always first to go is scheduling, inbox, travel, personal tasks. Those are like, got to get that off your plate. It's always, if you're following EOS, in the bottom right quadrant, got to go. Other repeatables would be like sending invoices, doing expenses, ordering gifts for clients, like things like that are just over and over again. We're doing this and maybe we're not doing it great, but it's working. Like you can show someone how you're doing it, let them make some modifications for improvement.
What I love about Delegate Solutions is, Emily, you mentioned this, that they will help you with your personal stuff, right? And so, it's hard to ask a W-2 employee to help you with some personal stuff, but Delegate Solutions, that's what they're really good at.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we always say we like to take the noise out of the office. So all those weird things that you might feel really uncomfortable giving to somebody sitting right next to you, that's great for this type of support resource.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And I think, for a lot of people get trapped. I was talking to someone who just started at Coach yesterday. He was on one of our weekly planning calls and he just described his day, and it started, picking up his phone when he woke up in the morning, going through his whole day and then spending some time with his kids over dinner and then back on either on his phone or his computer answering emails at night. And I was like, oh, dude, I forgot how bad that was for most people. But thinking you have to be everything. There's one obstacle here I think it'd be really fun for us to chat about, and that is letting go. There's a confidence level it takes to let go. You need to be confident in the person you're giving it to. We have a fun analogy that I've come up with called the relay. Right. So it's all fine to pass the baton, but if you pass it and you don't let go, it's not going to work very well. So what are some coaching tips for that either of you have for letting go? What have you noticed? I'm probably going to start with you, but you too, Alec, because you hire people for others all the time. What are some things where you've noticed where it's really worked versus where it hasn't?
Impact filter, 100%. I know you didn't tee up that one, but
I didn't actually think. I'm laughing because I often wrap my baton in impact filter. And by the way, if anyone is not in Coach or doesn't know what we're talking about, there's a great little quarterly book. You can find it on the Strategic Coach website in our store called The Extraordinary Impact Filter. And it's a great communication document to let people know what the heck you're actually intending with this. So so I love that answer. Emily, what else?
It's a little bit separate, but I'm just going to drop it in there because I think it's important. I think where I see a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck around what they're going to hand off is that they don't know what they want to spend their time on. And that is a really scary place to be. And it's one of the reasons why we don't let go, because we're like, but if I'm not doing this thing that I'm somewhat comfortable and good at, what am I going to do instead? And that's where I think like having a lot of clarity about what you're here to do, what your contribution is, and valuing that is a huge part of being able to actually delegate. So it's a little off what you were asking, but it's really important that I've uncovered.
I just love that, because basically not only are you passing it off to someone, you have to be confident and you have to have the right communication, but then you have to know what race you're going to run
doing instead. And it could be, I'm gonna go out for a walk, and that's okay. And it's just about you being comfortable with, this is my contribution. My contribution is I have a free mind to actually like look at things differently, and that's okay.
Yeah. And work strategically on the business. Do you figure out your unique ability? What is your unique contribution? Where do you make the biggest difference with the greatest amount of ease? That's really what we talk about. But unless if you're so focused on doing and the busyness, you're never going to let go, because again, your point is genius. You're never going to figure out what for. You have to have a why for why you're delegating.
If you are doing the things other people are doing, you're stealing from their unique ability, right? It's almost like a deep ethical issue, right? If you are doing things that are better suited for someone else, then you're kind of robbing them from being a blessing to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of people don't think, though, that if it's an activity that, for instance, that I don't like and I'm not good at and find very draining, we assume that everyone else is like us. Mm-hmm. And we all know from even just looking at profiles, even if we didn't have our own experience, that is so not true. People are stuff I love to do, like having this conversation in front of other people detest. They're like, oh, get me out of here. And other things that I'm like, oh gosh, can I procrastinate on this any longer, please? They're like, oh, let me at it, like scheduling. I run away. Like if I want to get anxious, I schedule. And my friend Nicole, she schedules to calm down. I think that's miraculous. So yeah, we can't make that assumption that other people are like us, because we are robbing them. And that's held back more delegation almost than anything I know, Alec. That's great. Now, Alec, what else have you seen helps people let go? I mean, I love that shift in mindset.
Yeah, no,
you're stealing from somebody else. That's bad.
Yeah. Number one, it's really understanding your unique ability, like Emily said, but really hiring a really strong individual in that role. Most entrepreneurs that have a hard time letting go have maybe tried to delegate to someone in the past, and it was just it was a friend, or if it was a mediocre hire, and they're like, man, I'm not going to hire anybody else, or I'm not going to give this responsibility away because no one can do it as well as I can. I'm guessing you didn't have the right person in place. You didn't have the person that loved to do it and was really good at it, and you should give it a second shot, and following a really good hiring process.
Yeah. I noticed that a lot of people have what I call scar tissue.
Yeah.
Bad hires or people who didn't work out, and they cannot work out on a couple of different levels. They cannot have the right attitude or motivation. They cannot have the right talents or strengths per profiles in terms of mental energy or their will, but also they may not have the right stuff upstairs, and that was it was a long time before I clued into the need for certain types of brain power that are needed for certain types of activities. There's one client who I said, you are wicked smart. And this is the guy with a lot of scar tissue. And I'm like, you need to hire other people who are wicked smart. That's a pretty casual expression to use, but he got it. And that's who he's hired. So all of those things are absolutely vital to have lined up. So I love that. Great question from Michael. Yes. And I'm going to throw that over to you guys, because this is a little bit more your world than mine.
Yeah, he says, how has the pandemic changed the pool of the remote workforce to choose from? Is it easier to find A players now? Are there any other things to consider so I don't make the mistakes others have made? So Alec, this is Marv for you.
Yeah, so this is, it is easier to find people. So you don't don't have to hire just in your metro area. So that has changed dramatically. It's really important, and this goes along the lines of, how do I find great people? So I'm going to answer the question. It's super important to be clear on who you want, what do you want them to do, what success looks like, what are the values that you want. So you want to be super clear, write that up, cast a large net, interview the candidates with the right tools, and really do a deep dive in who they are, because if they're working from home, are they going to have the same work ethic as if they were in person? And so you really want to evaluate them strongly. And then really understanding what success looks like, what are the behaviors that drive success, and making sure that they could do that, whether it's remote or in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a benefit now because you can hire from anywhere. I mean, my business has been remote for 14 years and I've been pounding this drum for as long as I can remember. So it's like just been so interesting to watch everything change, and now everyone's hiring remote. So it's a very positive thing. It's just a different way of managing people, I think. It's something that I would be thinking about if I'm moving into remote.
Yeah, and I've also heard that a lot of people who were not satisfied with their previous roles and they're actually more remote workers, period. So people are like, oh, I don't actually have to go into an office. I don't have to deal with a commute. I can be more available for my kids. So I think there's just actually more. So they still have to answer those questions. Can they still be effective if they're remote? I think it's a very valid one. But it's interesting. There's just a lot of people who've decided that they want to contribute and they want to make a living, but they want to do it differently. So I think what I've heard, there's just a lot, the pool's actually bigger now. Not only because there are, you can pull from anywhere, but because there are more people now in this remote workforce, which is kind of exciting, actually.
Yeah, I saw on the news, they're calling it the Great Resignation.
Yes, I saw that too.
I was like, I don't know if I should be scared of that or excited. But
well, and a lot of it, the article I read was a lot about women. And if they didn't like the company that they're at, or just felt like it was too much of a sacrifice, they're out of there, so there's some high-powered, capable women that are now available that weren't before, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah. Well, we have 2 minutes left. I don't see any other questions. If you have one, drop it in. The other thing we didn't talk about that we wanted to talk about was this concept of letting go of excellence. So I don't know if we have enough time in 2 minutes to dig into that, but that was something that we had said we wanted to cover.
I'll jump in quickly with the way that I think about it. And then, so in terms of, in strategic coach, we talk about incompetent, competent, excellent, and unique ability activities. Getting rid of incompetent and competent, it's kind of logical. If you're doing anything you're incompetent at, you're costing your company money. So bad idea. But sometimes people get to a point where they're doing what they are best at, and then a few things that they're best at and love to do. And that's probably one of the hardest things to let go of, is when you are really good at something. You guys alluded to this earlier. And that's one of the hardest ones to let go of. But I've learned, just a quick strategy, I've learned that I'm a bit of coach for a long time. I'm good at a bunch of things. But when someone else has more creativity to it, and because I know what I love to do and I have new things I want to do, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have so many more ideas about this than I do here. Now I'm surrounded by some pretty talented people, but that letting go of excellence, called the excellent trap. We wrote about it in our first version of the book, Unique Ability. People get stuck. They get highly paid, great teamwork, great reputation, but they're empty inside if they don't have a way to add in what they love to do. So the excellent trap is absolutely real.
Yeah, my escape hatch on that one was, it was a recurring thing that I was doing. So that could be a signal if you're up there in excellent and you're still doing work you love, but you're doing it the same thing over and over again, it can really become a delegation candidate. So think about that.
Yeah. And if you're what used to be unique, like, because you loved it, after you've got 15 t-shirts, you're like, okay, I need to get a more complex issue or a new challenge. And so then so what used to be a passion for you can become not one. And just to your point, I mean, that's the time to let go of it. 5 or 10 years ago, you might have loved it. You don't love it anymore. It's okay to give it to somebody else. Alec, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think, one of, escape, I guess escape hatch is a good word. For me, if it's something super easy and it doesn't take stress, like I just keep doing it. And so it's
Right.
important to do that activity inventory. And, I used to have it right on my desk all the time, and I need to get back at it because there's things I'm doing as you guys are talking. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm excellent at it. It's easy. It doesn't take me that much time, but yet it's something I got to think about and do. And if I can be doing other things, it would definitely create more value for my company. So there was a question from Frank about having a process for facilitating a remote working relationship. And my response to Frank would be that, it's still important to spend time with that person. So when they're first employed, every day, check in, and then scale it back to maybe once a week, but really spending a lot of time with them, asking good questions, making sure they have the resource they need to do the job. Frequent meetings, their direct report, daily, weekly. So that I wouldn't change that much to being remote as in managing someone in person.
And sometimes even you amp it up because you don't have those natural touch points during the day where you're crossing paths somewhere. So I'm finding that as frequent, it's more structured, but it really works. And then people don't have to hang on too long with unanswered questions, because that stops them. What are the bottlenecks? It's not knowing what the next thing to do or not having confidence to take action. So those frequent conversations can be quick, they're easier, and stuff doesn't build up. So yes, I'm a big fan of that.
Open office hours where you got the Zoom screen on and people can chime in whenever they can, Alex got office hours. I got, 2 hours here. I'm just going to ask a quick question. And those are helpful because if you're in the office, it's like, oh yeah, I got a quick question, right? So having those open office hours are really good. Time is super important.
That's the first time I've heard that. That is super cool. Just have your Zoom on and people have your link and can join in. That's very cool.
Well, we are over time, so we don't get a 10 today because we went over our limit. But thank you everybody for coming. Frank, I run a remote team. If I can answer any questions for you, you want to talk directly about it, I can share some of our strategies. Shannon or Alec, any closing thoughts?
No,
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I think these are, your obstacles are valid. And I just love that we had this conversation and you got your questions answered. So just appreciate it so that we can all be freed up to be our best who's. There's a few things that each of us are unique at, but for everything else, we got to find the other who's. So love this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, no shame here, just problem solving. Thanks everybody for coming. We will send the recording shortly. Have a good day.
Thanks everyone.